The West Coast Main Line from London Euston to Watford Junction may only cover a relatively short distance, but this is one of the most historically important and operationally fascinating stretches of railway anywhere in Britain. For railway enthusiasts, this route is absolutely packed with interest. This is the southern gateway to Britain's premier main line to the northwest and Scotland, a railway that has carried millions of passengers for nearly 2 centuries. From the earliest days of steam locomotives hauling trains out of London, to today's electric expresses racing north at high speed beneath the wires, this line has always stood at the heart of Britain's railway story. Our journey today begins beneath the great roof of London Euston Station. For many people, Euston is simply a busy London terminus, a place of rushing commuters, departure boards, coffee shops and crowded platforms. But for railway historians, Euston represents something far more important. This was London's very first main line intercity railway station. When Euston opened in 1837, Britain was in the middle of the Great Railway Revolution. The Industrial Revolution had transformed the country, and railways were rapidly changing how people travelled, worked and communicated. Before the railway age, travelling from London to Birmingham could take many exhausting hours by stagecoach over rough roads. The railway changed everything. The London and Birmingham Railway, engineered by the great Robert Stephenson, was one of the most ambitious engineering projects Britain had ever seen. Massive cuttings, tunnels, viaducts and embankments were carved across the countryside to create a direct railway route between the capital and the Midlands. And here at Euston, that great journey began. The original station was a magnificent structure, dominated by the famous Euston Arch, an enormous classical gateway inspired by ancient Roman architecture. The arch became one of the symbols of the railway age itself. Sadly, during the rebuilding of Euston in the 1960s, the arch was demolished, a decision still regretted by many historians and railway enthusiasts today. Yet, even modern Euston tells an important story. This station reflects the age of electrification, speed, and modern railway operation. The current station emerged during the massive modernisation of the West Coast Main Line, when Britain sought to transform its railways for the electric age. The platforms here have seen countless famous trains depart over the years: luxury expresses to Scotland, sleeper trains to Glasgow, steam-hauled named expresses like the Royal Scot, intercity services in the British Rail era, pendolinos tilting north under the wires, all have passed through Euston. And now, as our journey begins, we ease slowly out of the station throat into one of the most complex railway environments in the country. Immediately, the sheer scale of railway infrastructure becomes apparent. Tracks spread in every direction beneath forests of overhead wires and gantries. Signals glow red, yellow and green above the maze of rails. Units stand waiting in sidings while express trains weave between slower suburban services. This is a living railway machine. To the casual passenger, it may seem chaotic, but every movement is carefully planned. Every crossover, junction and signal has a purpose. As we move north from Euston, the line begins climbing steadily towards Camden. This section was once one of the most unusual parts of the railway anywhere in Britain. In the very earliest days of operation, steam locomotives were not initially permitted to work directly into Euston because of concerns about smoke and safety within the city. Instead, trains were hauled up the incline from Camden by stationary winding engines using ropes and cables. Imagine that scene in the 1830s. Passengers sitting in early railway carriages while enormous stationary engines hauled entire trains uphill into London. It sounds extraordinary today, but this was pioneering railway technology at the time. Soon, locomotive technology improved sufficiently for trains to work directly into Euston under their own power. but Camden remained an important railway location for decades afterwards. The Camden area became associated with locomotive depots, engineering works and railway yards. In steam days, this would have been a smoky, noisy industrial landscape filled with locomotives preparing for duty. Today, much has changed, but the railway character remains. As we continue northwestwards, London spreads around us in layers of brick, concrete and steel. This is not dramatic mountain scenery, but it has a beauty all of its own. Rows of Victorian terraced houses line the route. Old bridges pass overhead, carrying busy London streets. Graffiti-covered retaining walls flash past beside modern apartment blocks and industrial buildings. For railway enthusiasts, urban railways possess a unique atmosphere. Every bridge hints at hidden routes. Every junction suggests distant destinations. Every signal box and depot tells part of a larger story. Soon we pass through the South Hampstead and Kilburn area, where the Watford DC lines run parallel to the main line. This separate suburban route has its own fascinating history. Today it forms part of the London Overground network, but historically these lines represented the growth of suburban London during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As London expanded outwards, railways became essential for commuters travelling into the city each day. Entire suburbs grew around railway stations, transforming villages into bustling communities. The Bakerloo line also shares parts of this route further south, creating an unusual mixture of underground and mainline railway operation. Watching Bakerloo line trains running alongside West Coast mainline expresses is one of those uniquely London railway experiences. At Queen's Park, the relationship between Underground and National Rail becomes especially clear. This station forms an important interchange point where London's Underground and suburban railway networks overlap. For enthusiasts, Queen's Park offers wonderful railway viewing opportunities. Fast trains roar through on the main lines, while Overground and Bakerloo services call at the platforms nearby. The variety of railway traffic here is remarkable. Express passenger trains, local commuter services, empty stock movements, occasional freight workings, engineering trains. Everything passes through this corridor, and because the route is so busy, there is almost always something happening. As we continue north, we approach Willesden. Now this is a name that carries enormous significance in British railway history. Willesden Junction became one of London's great railway crossroads. Lines converged here from every direction. The North London line, the West London line, the Watford DC lines, the West Coast main line itself. For many years, Willesden was one of the busiest and most complicated railway areas anywhere in Britain. Railwaymen supposedly joked that Willesden Junction should really have been called Bewildering Junction because of the complexity of the tracks and platforms. And it is not difficult to understand why. Even today, the area around Willesden feels intensely railway oriented. Sidings stretch away beside the main lines. Maintenance depots occupy former railway land. Freight routes branch away towards the North London network. In steam days, this district was dominated by Willesden Locomotive Depot, known by the famous shed code 1A. This was one of London's major steam sheds. Great express locomotives were serviced here before heading north towards Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester and Scotland. Imagine the atmosphere during the steam era. The noise of safety valves hissing, clouds of coal smoke drifting beneath the depot roof, firemen shoveling coal into glowing fireboxes, locomotives simmering between duties. For enthusiasts in the 1950s and early 1960s, Willesden must have been an extraordinary place to visit. Today, although the steam locomotives have vanished, the railway importance of Willesden remains. Electric units now dominate the scene beneath the overhead wires. Modern maintenance depots replace old coaling stages, yet the railway energy survives. As our train passes through this district, there is always something to observe. A pendolino accelerating northwards, an overground train crossing onto suburban lines, a freightliner moving slowly through the yards, a unit waiting beside a depot fence. This is railway choreography on a grand scale. Further north lies Wembley Central. Most people immediately associate Wembley with football and Wembley Stadium, one of Britain's most famous sporting venues. And indeed, on match days, these railways become absolutely packed with supporters travelling to major events. But Wembley also possesses deep railway significance. The lines here have long formed part of one of Britain's busiest transport corridors. The station itself handles a mixture of mainline, overground and underground services, creating another important interchange point within London's transport network. As we pass through Wembley, the line begins gradually changing character. The dense central London atmosphere slowly gives way to a more suburban environment. The buildings become more spaced apart. Small green spaces appear beside the tracks. The railway feels slightly less enclosed, yet this remains an intensely busy route. Above us, the overhead wires hum with electricity. The electrification of the West Coast Main Line was one of the most ambitious railway modernisation projects Britain ever undertook. Beginning in the 1950s and continuing through the 1960s, the route was transformed from a steam railway into a high-speed electric main line. Steam locomotives disappeared, replaced first by early electric locomotives and diesel traction. The arrival of electrification revolutionised journey times and operating efficiency. Today, electric traction dominates the route completely. Modern electric trains accelerate rapidly away from stations, gliding smoothly beneath the wires in a way steam engineers of the 19th century could scarcely have imagined. As we continue north, we pass Stonebridge Park and the nearby depots associated with London Underground and Overground operations. Again, this area is rich in railway atmosphere. Railway enthusiasts often love routes like this precisely because they reveal the hidden operational side of Britain's rail network. Not every interesting railway journey requires dramatic scenery. Sometimes the fascination comes from infrastructure, operations, and railway complexity itself. And this route delivers that in abundance. Soon we approach Harlesden and then the important station of Harrow and Wealdstone. This station occupies a very significant place in British railway history. On the morning of the 8th of October 1952, one of Britain's worst railway disasters occurred here. A local train standing at the station was struck from behind by an express train in thick fog. Moments later, another express travelling in the opposite direction collided with the wreckage. The result was catastrophic. More than 100 people lost their lives and many more were injured. The disaster shocked the nation and led to important improvements in railway safety systems and signalling procedures. Even today, Harrow and Wealdstone remains deeply associated with that tragic event. Yet the station also represents the resilience and evolution of the railway. Today, modern signalling systems, advanced safety technology and electric traction ensure a far safer railway than existed during the steam era. As we continue north beyond Harrow, the line begins feeling increasingly open. The suburban scenery continues, but there are more trees, embankments, and glimpses of wider landscapes between buildings. Fast trains thunder past at considerable speed. Watching an Avanti West Coast Pendolino race north through this section is always impressive. These modern trains tilt slightly through curves, allowing higher speeds and smoother journeys on the historic route. It is remarkable to think that the alignment beneath us in many places still follows the route surveyed during the 1830s. Despite modernisation, electrification and resignaling, much of the original railway still survives beneath today's infrastructure. That continuity is one of the most fascinating aspects of British railways. Victorian engineering still forms the backbone of the modern network. Soon we approach Bushey. Bushey is one of those stations that perfectly captures the commuter railway atmosphere of outer London. Platforms busy with passengers, overhead wires stretching into the distance, fast trains passing through without stopping while local services call beside them. Around here, you truly appreciate the operational intensity of the Southern West Coast Main Line. Intercity expresses heading for Birmingham and Glasgow share tracks with Suburban stopping services and occasional freight trains. Coordinating all this traffic requires extraordinary precision from railway signallers and controllers. And finally, after leaving Bushey behind, we approach Watford Junction. For railway enthusiasts, Watford Junction is a wonderfully interesting station. This has long been one of the major railway centres north of London. The station developed rapidly during the 19th century as railways expanded across Hertfordshire and beyond. Its name reflects its importance. This truly is a junction station. Lines diverged from here towards St Albans Abbey and other destinations, while suburban and long-distance services all converged on the main line platforms. Historically, Watford Junction also became associated with railway engineering and maintenance activity. Over the decades, countless locomotives, units and carriages have passed through here. For many passengers today, Watford Junction simply marks the edge of London. But for rail enthusiasts, it represents the threshold between suburban London railways and the great long-distance West Coast route to the Midlands and Scotland. Standing on the platforms here, you can watch trains heading towards Birmingham New Street, Manchester Piccadilly, Liverpool Lime Street, Preston, Carlisle and Glasgow Central. The railway possibilities seem endless, and that is exactly why this relatively short stretch of line is so fascinating. The journey from London Euston to Watford Junction contains nearly every element that makes British railways special. Historic stations, Victorian engineering, complex junctions, suburban commuter operations, mainline expresses, railway history, electric traction, urban railway scenery, and above all, atmosphere. This route feels alive. At every moment there is movement, energy and railway activity. It is the beating heart of Britain's railway network. For railway enthusiasts, this section of the West Coast Main Line is highly recommended. Ride it in the cab if possible. Watch trains from the platforms. Study the junctions and signals. Listen to the sounds of electric trains accelerating beneath the wires. Observe the endless choreography of one of Britain's busiest rail corridors. Because even on this comparatively short journey, you are witnessing nearly 2 centuries of railway history unfolding around you. From the pioneering days of the London and Birmingham Railway to the modern electric age, this route continues to evolve while remaining true to its historic purpose, connecting London with the north. Thank you for joining me on this journey from London Euston to Watford Junction along the historic West Coast Main Line. I hope you have enjoyed this look at the history, infrastructure, stations and railway atmosphere along one of Britain's most important rail corridors. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, share it with fellow railway enthusiasts and subscribe to the channel for more railway journeys, driver's eye views, railway history and classic British railway content. Thank you very much for watching and thank you as always for supporting the channel.